allergic. I think I need to go.
All right. Thank you, ladies, once again for being willing to come together and have yourselves on video. This is the first grade team from Prairie View Elementary, and we are going to be talking about our beginning of year Kathy Richardson results. So we have for you guys the recording sheet that is from the Net School folder. Like how I keep making these little plugs in there. Yeah. It's in the Net School folder. And so what we're actually going to do today is fill part of this out with the data that you have. And what we're really going to focus on is this next steps piece. So what are we going to do for those kids that fall into these categories? So you guys did your number arrangements assessment, where really the big goal was you were trying to see if they can recognize the parts without necessarily having to count every single dot on the card, right? Okay. So typically, what did you guys kind of see overall with your kids that they were doing from the ones you've assessed so far?
Most of them could recognize the first 3 cards easily, the 3, 4, and the 5. And then 6, they could see the parts, but they didn't recognize it automatically.
Okay.
That was just most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with mine, because I do have about half of my class is really low, so the ones that could recognize, it was like the 4 and the 3, they could recognize that really quickly.
But it was any like number higher, they kind of started to struggle.
Yes, if it was like 5, 6, like even the 5 there with the 4 and the 1, they were like nodding their heads to count them.
I think I noticed the same thing. But what I was going to say is these lessons remind me a lot, or this reminded me a lot of some of the Stepping Stones lessons that we talked about, because there were dot arrangements, and we were talking about how we put up like the arrangement that was like on a dice. So that's why I think they totally get the 4 and the 3, because it's familiar to them. But even moving that 1 below the 4 instead of right in the middle, like threw some of them off.
You're exactly right, because when I asked them, I said, how did you recognize that so quickly? And they said, because on the cue, what did one of them called it something funny one time, I should have wrote that down, but it was on the little block, or when they played a game.
That we called it.
Interesting. So it seems like for everyone, as soon as they got up to like past 5 or 6, that range right there is they kind of started to struggle with numbers past that. So let's just kind of focus or narrow in on that like first section with maybe the 3, 4s, and 5s, like this first half here that you guys did, and we'll use that to fill out our chart. So in terms of students that had to, for the most part, if they had to count all, so we're going to actually look through our blue sheets, students that really had to kind of count all of the dots in order to be able to know they didn't recognize any parts or recognize the number as a whole, then we'll just write their names in this first section. If we had students that they could identify the parts and could count them, but maybe they just didn't do it very quickly. So maybe they saw that with the 5, they could see that it was maybe 2, 2, and 1, but then they'd see the 2, but they'd still want to like recheck themselves or keep counting on in order to get the total, instead of just saying, oh, 2, 2, and 1, oh, that's 5. So really between the second and the third column, it's really the quickly, can they look at it and be able to tell without really having to count every single one that's the number. So we're kind of just going to look through our blue sheets and kind of make that decision about where each one should go.
And the quickly, should that be up to the 6?
Let's do up to the 6 right now, and let me recheck y'all's recheck your beginning of year standard on Net School on that document. There's a document in Net School called Big Ideas.
Parts, but she counted all on those, and then she recognized that one.
Yeah, because I would say
She would do that.
yeah, she didn't count on all of them.
Make sure.
She had one on that, and then she just had one in the part.
So for
Still
beginning of the year, we're gonna focus on 5.
Okay.
So up to the 5. Past that, we're not gonna necessarily say, because most of them would be in the counts all section then. So we're just gonna
Oh,
focus
okay.
on just up to the 5,
So those
which I
first
think is
ones.
reasonable for beginning of year.
Okay. She was reading So he was doing this one.
Yes. We're not even going into necessarily all of these.
And then Melina would be in
So
here.
on the, so
She's
we're only going up to
actually-
5
Mhm.
because
How come you-
like on these ones,
No,
the kids would
because
say
that
there's
should
5
have
and there's
been
2,
all
1,
on
2,
there. I
3,
don't
4,
know
5, 6,
why,
7, but that's up to
because she
7.
did
So
recognize
don't even
that.
worry if they did that up here, just what
Right.
they did down
I don't
here.
know why
Exactly.
I did
Okay.
that, But she
Okay, cool.
did
Because
it when
more
she
than
got to
likely,
5 and to
well, first of all, if they
6,
can do up to
and
the
then
7, they're probably already going to
She
be
counted all on
anyway.
that one.
So that
So
can
then I
also be
didn't
a
go
quick
on
indicator
on
for
that
you
one.
of if they were able to do this one
Yeah,
very
Melina,
quickly and they were
she
at the
did
A,
on
that
that.
they were just able to
And
do those
then
combinations
this
or
one's
just knew
the
it,
only
then they'd
one,
probably be here with
Elijah,
anything
but
less
on
than
all
that
of these,
also.
even that
Right,
four,
and then
he
for instance,
counted
he said that,
one.
but then he went back and counted
So
all
he
of them.
would
You know what I
be-
mean? But that's up
Mhm.
at the 7, so.
Right. Yeah,
if they
I would
have an
definitely
A-
focus on that.
If they have an A on the 4,
So
5, and the
one,
3, they should be
two.
over in this last column.
I would say so. I mean, you guys definitely were the ones to actually do the interviews with the kids. I mean, were they able to, if you marked A, do you feel like that was really an indication that they could do that pretty quickly?
Okay,
Yeah, we can
now
put that there.
just kinda go over. Or she.
She's actually pretty good at that. She's really coming along. Same way with Ulysses. Ulysses good. I'm putting her work out on the board.
See, most of mine, it was the 6, because they said there's 4.
Robert.
But I would just,
And then I said,
Yeah,
and?
who's that one?
which is so funny because
Counted
since,
4.
They said, and a lot of them would say,
he had to
and,
count
oh,
those.
and
Well,
2.
he just
And I'd say,
said 2
okay.
and 2 on this.
And then I'd be like, so what is
so
that?
how much is that, right?
And then some of them went 4, 5, 6, so they're still counting on.
Mhm.
But like one of mine said, oh, there's 4, and then I said, and he said 2, and I said, so that makes, and he said 6. So I was like, okay, so he got it. But a lot
So
of
they
them,
can identify the parts, they can even do the counting on,
On.
but actually combining it without you prompting them is just kind of
See what
tricky.
he's got.
yeah, see, that's what happened to on
Which
the
that
6
makes
card.
sense
I
for
don't know what
beginning of
he's
your
over
first grade, that
thinking.
they should be able to do
Yeah.
combinations
He-
of 5 pretty quickly.
He comes up with some,
I assume that's still recording.
I think
A little
he's
green light's
getting
on.
it, and then he comes up with some stuff like,
Oh.
how did you get that?
Right.
You know, like we were doing first, second, third, and he totally was off
It's
on
interesting
that
because so
today.
far my friends are either falling in the
And
counts
then
all or combines quickly. I don't really have any in the middle.
Interesting.
Mine are all in the
Rhonda's got a
middle.
lot in the middle.
That's
In the
so fun.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh,
far.
and you're the same way.
No,
Yeah.
mine, I don't have any of them.
Oh, and that, wow.
But I haven't done my whole class, so
Oh, right.
you know
Yeah.
that could change.
Well, we'll definitely still talk
Oh
about
my
each of these
goodness.
3 and then kind of see what we could do.
Why do you
if
have
we
those
do
top
this.
two in that
Okay.
separate box then?
Yeah, that's just
Because
really-
they were in this
Jaden.
second column. Like all of these, that was just for my own
Just show
personal.
them.
Oh, I was just curious.
All of these knew 4, 5, and 3, and then I put these 2 in a separate box.
Oh, 'cause they were
in
even
this
able-
column.
But she
Oh.
recognized that
Yeah.
one.
Nice.
So
Okay.
she's in the middle.
See, Rhonda's got a lot of kids who do the 3, but then either counted the 4 in groups of 2 and 2, and had to count 5 all the way, or had to count, or
Mm-hmm. They
kind
counted.
of all over the place on.
And also, let's see, how many of these kids too, did they do this type of stuff last year teaching in kindergarten? Because how many of these kids of mine are new? I have about half my class.
Oh,
They
that's
weren't
true.
here last
Yeah.
year.
I know
Like
they did at least some in
Calera,
kindergarten
did.
because one little boy today said, "I know that
Brayden.
6 because I've seen that before in kindergarten on a different card."
Yeah,
Mhm.
Robert.
So
you remember that
Robert
arranged
was
here?
there.
I know they did like quick
Trinity's
images and
new.
things like that too.
Right.
Calera's new.
They did a lot of
James
things with
new.
supervising, looking at like
Gage is
quick
new.
images and being able
And
to
even
make
Smarty's
combinations quickly,
Rings is new.
to just know the number. So I know they
Brayden
did that
here.
last year. So that's probably helping
He's
to
new.
contribute to them being able to see those parts.
But when you get to the bigger groups, because just knowing
Mm-hmm.
that it's like they can totally find parts and they can tell you, but they can't
No.
put it together. They don't trust
They don't think
themselves.
of the next step of, let me just combine them.
Yeah.
They go
Without
back to
wanting
one.
to count them all
Mhm.
again,
Almost
just to
Yeah.
double check. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that goes with that confidence piece of, well, I
'Cause he went up
got
to
4 and
5,
2,
so
but
he could
let me
double
go back
it,
and,
or could
I
he?
think it's
Yeah.
6, but let me count them all just in case.
Mhm. And goes back to grouping and trusting
Yeah.
that this is this, no matter what.
Mhm.
This is, okay.
Alright, so we ready to keep this party going? So it's looking like from everyone's documentation here that we definitely have a need for some things, some next steps for each one of these sections. So thinking in terms of what are we gonna do for these kids? So I asked you to bring this book too, because actually in your, and you guys have probably seen this before, in this book here, that kind of more detailed version of the Kathy Richardson assessment, there's a place in the back on page 51, and we can even just share these, that basically it goes to show you that however the kids are doing, whether it's they need instruction, so they're on that I, they just need practice with a certain skill, or they're ready to apply the A, it gives you suggestions of activities that you could actually do with them to strengthen those skills. And all of the activities that it refers to are in these books, the Developing Number Concepts. So we feel like we have some kids all over. So on page 50, it talks about if you have a student that they're even with just the 2, 3, and the 4, I'll read upside down today. It says, if children need instruction in recognizing small groups, which some of them do, the ones that are counting all, they need the practice with recognizing small groups. So that would be this first part on here on page 50. There are some teacher, small group activities that you can do with them, and it focuses on numbers going up to 5 and 6. And these, all these activities you can adjust for whatever number your kids are on. So if you feel like that you had some of those kids that even at the 3 or 4 that they weren't that successful, then you could still adjust the activity. So what I want us to kind of do is look at a couple of these and actually find them in our Developing Number Concepts book and kind of pick out a few. Not, they list a lot of them for different sections, but just want to pick out maybe 1 or 2 that we're willing to kind of try. And a lot of these kids can do independently or with a partner. They're like game type of activities that they could do like in your guided math groups. That could be their fluency station that when they finish, or even not in guided math groups, but when they finish an activity, they know, ooh, let me pull out this activity that my teacher told me that I need to do anytime I finish work. And it goes back to these same skills that they need practice on with the combining and recognizing groups. So let's just kind of start with this counts all section. There are a couple of activities. The way that you kind of read this, and it's kind of hard to understand when you first look at it, but because there's a number and then there's a colon and there's like 2 numbers. So the first number before the colon, it tells you what book number, because there's a book 1, 2, and 3. So that first one, they're all in book 2. So it's in this book 2, addition and subtraction. And then the next section kind of tells you like the chapter number, or basically the activity number. So 3-2, 3-3, and 3-4. So that should be fairly early in the book. So 3-2 is on page 115, and then it goes into 117 for 3-3, and then 120 for 3-4. And these are meant as small group activities, but just kind of skim through those and see, maybe pick one that you feel like you'd want to commit to doing with your kids that you feel like would be the most beneficial for your students that are in this counts all section. So we'll kind of just glance through and kind of discuss maybe some that we feel like we would want to start with.
Remember, this is like we were gonna make those cards that I showed you guys last year with the green and pink dots or whatever with the stickers to arrange them in different ways, and then when you have volunteers come in, that could be a game they could play with them.
Mm-hmm.
And just being on the curriculum writing team, I brought that up to them, and so it should be somewhere in the fluency section.
In that school.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember which module. I'll have to look into that.
Okay.
But I put it on there.
Yeah, something like that, because even this, though it's a small group activity, if you do it with them once, they could totally do this in partners.
Yeah.
That they just hold it up and they say, tell me fast, how many are there? And you could just have, as a kind of a quick check, the number could actually be on the back so they can self-check. And they can work on their combinations that way. I mean, and it could even be in these dots. It could be, even like it shows just these multiple examples on 114. I like that there are several different arrangements instead of just the dice or just the little squares, but it could be lines and tallies. So something like that would be, I think, really simple to do.
The other thing that I think we can do, just depending on where they are, is like actually get the manipulatives and have them build a model, because some of my friends might not quite be ready for the pictorial. So have them build a model and, you know, cover it up, and then, okay, quick, show me, and show them and put it down, and the other kid can draw what was there or whatever, but then they can manipulate it, because they can say, oh, there were 2 right here and there were 3 right here, so if I have 3 and 2, that's 5. So they can move it and put their hand on it, because a lot of my friends need that. They need that physical, just put their hand on it, separate it, put it together.
So even if it was something like this and you use like connecting cubes and maybe just the counting out and putting them on the sections, and then they have to even combine the groups, because I just flipped backwards onto this page that just showed about number combinations, and when I saw the connecting cubes being put together, it made me think, oh, what they could do is try to see whatever combinations they saw and group those together. So if they saw this row of 4 first, they could connect those and put them there. And then they saw the row of 2, connect those 2, put them there, and then the 1. And then they have to practice adding all of that together to get the total.
And what's interesting too is they're really working on early stages of conservation of number, because if there's 5, there's not going to be 6 next time, and no matter how you separate it, it's always going to be 5, you know, so getting that early practice before 2nd grade, you know, you're really hitting.
That's a really good point too, because if you have a student that they were struggling with the 5, maybe 5 is the one you want to just keep hitting with them. So maybe they have 5 different cards or 6 different cards that with different representations, but they're all still 5. So it looks like this, it looks like with, you know, different shapes in one card. Another one, it's like little toothpicks in different places on it, so that no matter what, they can understand that it doesn't matter how I count them, it's still going to be the same amount. And it doesn't matter what the model even looks like, it's still the same amount in making those combinations.
You can find those, just like there's boxes on this, and then there's just different kinds in the back of this book too.
So are you guys feeling like that might be an activity that you would definitely want to do? So you can actually, in this next step section, you could just write that down in terms of, let's see, 3-2, and you could even put book 2. Yeah. It's this one.
So these are just shaded.
And actually, these are in the back, 76 through 82.
So on the council, what number do we just want to go up to number 5?
It's just going to kind of depend on where they were. Like I thought I heard you guys say that y'all had like 3 they had, but like the 4 they were even still doing 2 and 2. So if they were on 4, if they had to go 2, 4, or 2, then I would even start there with those kids. So you might have kids who are doing different numbers. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that just goes back to that differentiation piece, where to the kids themselves, they might be thinking they're working on the same thing as someone that's with them, but they're working on the number that's individualized for what they actually need.
Okay.
And in the past, I've done like just right math games that were kind of like that. So each kid had their own number they were working on, and they knew their number and they knew their activity. So you can take these partner games and make them an independent activity.
And just like that, when we talked about here, that could be something independent they do, putting the cubes on the actual model on the card and then making their combinations. checking the total and then turning to the back of the card to make sure that they were correct. So any opportunity you can make to have the activities be self-checking, because that removes you from being needed every moment that they're working on it. So they can always just double check themselves so that you can be actually working with a small group on a different task or whatever the learning might be for that day. So self-check is really important.
And writing on that self-check, it's not just a 6, but it's also SIX. I mean, adding in some.
Definitely. Having the numeral and the word.
Yeah.
And then that you have the picture on the other side that they're building for. Yeah, I was looking at this next one, 3-4. I think that one would still have to be done with a small group, only because it's different colors. Did you guys, someone look at that one too? Yeah, with the instant recognition of number trains.
Does that matter, do you think?
The little green light is on, so I'm thinking it's still okay. Here, I'll just move the mouse and just see.
There goes your video.
Yeah, this is what I was thinking about.
Oh, they're already made.
They're made. That's what I was trying to say, but they're not in the back of this one. I lied. They're in the back of this one. So this is the test. So I didn't mean that.
Yes,
I meant
I have
this.
those dot cards.
So they're already. So I don't know, but because there's 3. Yeah, 3 on that one.
So you can take the
Are you
dots
sure?
that are
That
3,
is.
the toothpicks that are 3, the
And
whatever
then,
else is in
well,
there.
these are just different arrangements of those. And this one's 1 to 7. This one's 1 to 7.
Yeah, and it depends on what your kids' goal is.
It
I mean,
is.
if
See,
they
I have those cards
identify all
already
of them
made.
but 3, then you would want to do the multiple representations of 3.
And that's where you had them in the shoe organizer, and they could just go there.
They just went and pulled it, and they knew what their
If it's
numbers were.
referred in here, it's in the very back.
That's a good idea.
You know, like the
Because then
shoe
they would just store them in
organizers.
their desk, and I already have one of those shoe
And so
organizers.
I just put
Mhm.
numbers
So you
on
can
there.
make it
What I
like
do
little
when I'm
books.
done with my math one, and each kid has
And
a
they're
little pocket,
using
and you can
the
keep their cards in there.
Cover
So
part
like if they
Mhm.
finished their math work or whatever, then they would just go and they would just pick that up.
Mhm.
And now they would have to
Exactly.
do that, and they knew what they were supposed to do. And then if they finished that, I had another, I had other things in place. But then they automatically, it's just I finish my work, I go get my Just Right Math game, I play 3 rounds of it or whatever, and then. And it's really easy. It doesn't take up space because you just have that shoe organizer. Just stick it up on the wall.
Mhm.
That's what I did.
That's a good idea. And I think with all of these, they're really easy to change out. And so all it would take for you to know if they've mastered that number is, as they're working on it one day, walk over and just listen. How fast are they able to do it? Are they faster than they were before? Are they ready to move up to a different number? And then if that's the case, all you do is add in the next set of cards for them to practice for the next number. So I think that'd be a really good activity for students, especially if they're the ones that are counting every single one. trying
So
to find
if they're
those
work,
groups.
so if they're working on a number, you just have that one number in all different ways, or more than one number?
You could actually do a combination. It could be from 3 up to 5. It could be like a range. I think that'd be a really good idea. Especially if you have a student that maybe they're on like the edge.
Right.
They're getting a little better, but throwing them like a more of a variety rather than just always knowing that that's going to be 5.
Right.
So that would be a good idea to just have like 3, 4, and 5.
Maybe
in there.
3 different numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then do you have toothpicks for that, or do you just do the cubes for all of
I
them?
never had toothpicks.
Okay, no, that
I
sounds too dangerous.
or I'd use crayons. Like I just have them look at the card and make the arrangements using the crayons. I just felt like toothpicks was not a good idea.
No,
Yeah.
probably not.
Probably. Maybe lime.
You sound like you've been doing this a
while.
Crayons that
Right.
are broken would be a good.
That's what I usually had them do. Just build it on, or if the crayons were too big, then just make it underneath.
You could use popsicle sticks too.
Yeah.
And we have a bunch of those.
Oh, yeah.
We do have a
They're
bunch of
like-
those.
Yeah,
So what?
and they had those
Popsicle
little
sticks.
Oh, yeah.
popsicles.
They came with the calendar set, and you could use them for that instead.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, they are the little ones too.
Uh-huh.
The little half size versions.
Where do you find those?
Those
Hobby Lobby?
Noodles. Just get a box of noodles.
That's true. I was gonna say there has to be a better way of something
Yeah.
that's around here. Noodles. That's a good
Penne,
one.
rotini.
Oh, there's all kinds
Yeah.
of stuff in the science lab.
Mhm.
Just go grab it.
Ooh, there you go. So I think they'd love that.
Mm-hmm.
You would absolutely love that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at this next section. So we have students that would count every single one. And okay, so we'll kind of talk about these next two sections. So students that they're able to combine some of the parts or and maybe combine some of them but just not do it quickly, or they can combine some of them but then they have to like go back and recheck themselves. So in this section on page 51, it talks about students that just need more instruction on identifying and combining those parts, so they don't have to necessarily count all, but they're ready for this next step here. And that would kind of also go to this next section here of just more practice. There are actually several independent activities listed explicitly. There are some teacher-directed that are more like small group, and then some independent ones. I want to say these several first ones are kind of similar. So it's in book 2. Activity 2-14 is where it starts. And the first one's on page 78.
This is kind of combining what we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And in this closet right here, there are tons of these that are the foamy ones, so they don't make noise. I mean, they're quiet.
So with this one, you could actually just give them like the card with the number written on it, the numeral written or written in a word form. So for those kids that maybe are ready for like 5 or 6, and it could just be 2 numbers that they're always working on and trying to create the combinations for them. So basically they're creating their own arrangements for the number, which I really like that, because that might help, especially some of the ones that are always wanting to maybe see some of the parts and count on. If they're making them themselves, then they might be able to better change their frame of reference to that. What are you guys thinking? So actually I think the next several ones, so ones like with cubes, then it has the tiles. So it's basically just different tools.
Yeah, like some of these even have keys and nuts and bolts, just different objects that they could manipulate.
So it's
Not
that
the
goes
same
again to
thing.
what you guys were talking about earlier of transferring that it
Mhm.
doesn't matter what I'm looking at.
I agree. I think that's really the big driving force around why they need to be exposed to lots of different objects. So one of these activities, or you could just even put 2-14 through 2-17, because they're all the same but just different materials. So I think that would be a good next step for the middle section and the one on the end. And really, the one on the end, just they work at a different number, a higher one. So if they're able to make groups quickly, then I would start getting to 6 and on. How are you guys feeling about that? You good? Do you feel like this is something that's manageable into things that you're already doing? That's the great thing I will say about these Kathy Richardson activities, is that you don't have to like go out and make a whole bunch of stuff or go do a lot. You could do this tomorrow if you wanted to. So, well, you guys feeling okay about Kathy Richardson? Well, when this is done, when you are finished with the window and you have all your kids in there, all you'll do is intercampus mail this to us. Just make a copy and just send us a version at admin. You can send it to Shelly and I just at the admin building. So we just keep a set of these so we have them for data purposes.
Do you want just their first names?
Yeah, just first name is fine. However you can best identify it.
Okay. I know I'm writing this.
Does that work? That was just fine. I so appreciate you guys being willing to do this with me. How do I this?
Absolutely.
It's a little. Get this on. No, I don't know the password.
Oh, and then they can do number sentences too. Practice doing their number sentences.
Leader of the week, Casey.
Oh, I got it right the first time.
What was it?
Hawks